Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Compassionate Book Talk Night. I'm going to hand it over to Rev William as we gather here for a few opening words.
Yes, and I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. And for those of you who are new to the Compassion Consortium, I'm just going to explain a little bit about what we are and why we exist. But first, just a little personal note from me. I am a kind of a new reverend, and I only graduated from seminary on Saturday. So I'm still getting used to calling myself Reverend, but I did change my name in the name box. So anyway, thank you for being here. And now about the Compassion Consortium. We are a non-sectarian and interfaith religious center, and we offer spiritual guidance, support, and fellowship to vegans, vegetarians, animal rights activists, animal lovers, and all humans who care about and advocate for animals and the planet. And we recognize that many people do not see their deeply rooted compassion for all creatures reflected in their houses of worship. Some have even left faith traditions after seeing these innocent, loving beings excluded from the level of mercy they deserve. In many cases, they're even denied the possession of a soul. So the Compassion Consortium is here to supplement this missing piece for persons who are part of another religious or spiritual community and those who are not. We welcome participants of all faiths or none. Our regular monthly service takes place on Sunday afternoons, the fourth Sunday of every month at 4 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And we do that to avoid interference with most church, synagogue, temple, or mosque services. And our next service will be June 27th, and we'll share some more with you about that particular service at the end of the evening. And now back to Reverend Sarah.
Thank you, Reverend William, and I'm so delighted to say Reverend William as well. Congratulations on your new title, but beyond that, what that means for you going forth in the world in service. So glad to be part of this organization with you. So I want to welcome everyone, and what we want to do is start by taking a moment to extend beyond ourselves and radiate compassion out from this space. We're called the Compassion Consortium. We love spiritual practice, and we're going to talk some books tonight, but we're going to start with just a little bit of blessing and radiating compassion. So if you'll just take a deep breath with me. Bring your attention to how you feel in the space you're in, what the air feels like. Feel your feet on the ground. And bring your attention to your heart space. And listen to the words that I offer from there. I call this prayer the Animal Rosary. Hail, sacred sustainer of life. May my presence be a blessing to all creatures. Blessed furriness walking on four legs, may you be sustained and flourish. Blessed feathered of the skies, may you be sustained and flourish. Blessed finned beings of the waters, may you be sustained and flourish. Blessed leafy ones rooted in the earth, may you be sustained and flourish. May it be so. Take another deep breath with me. And I feel like now I just want to scream happy Pride. So I know we started that way with a little bit of excitement today. It is Pride Month. And so in honor of that, today we're going to have a chat with Reverend Allison, who is one of the other 4 co-founders of the Compassion Consortium here. You heard from William. Also his wife, Victoria Moran, is another co-founder, and myself and Erica. And Erica has a recent book out that fits perfectly in this month. And so I'm going to read you her bio, then we're going to do a few questions with her and then open it up to Q&A. So Erica Allison is an interfaith minister and inspirational speaker who helps the queer community and also some really cool straight people to find spiritual liberation and live joyful, authentic lives. She is the author of the award-winning, congrats on the recent award, Erica, the award-winning book, Gay the Pray Away, Healing Your Life, Love, and Relationships from the Harms of LGBT Conversion Therapy. Formerly a practicing mechanical engineer, Erica sees the world in systems and in connections. Her healing journey led her to expand this view through the study of body work, healing touch, energy psychology, journey dance, breath work, a whole bunch of great stuff. Erica became ordained through the One Spirit Interfaith Seminary, a progressive program exploring the deep truths at the heart of all authentic spiritual traditions. She offers workshops and programs, coaching, retreats to strengthen one's inner compass through awareness and alignment. Birthed out of her own suffering at the hands of unconscious religion. I love that, unconscious religion. Erica is a committed vegan in her quest to reduce suffering for all beings. Enthusiasm is her spiritual practice. Erica also serves on the board of Farm Sanctuary and advocates for kindness and inclusive awareness for all beings. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who joined us tonight. I'm so excited you're here.
And I also am going to throw into the chat your Facebook, your Instagram, and all of that, so people who are interested in what we're talking about tonight can keep connected with you.
It'd be wonderful. I'd love to be connected with any of you.
And I'd also like to thank Phil for being on the bridge and keeping us organized here and technologically in sync. So I'm going to turn it over to Erica to do a little bit of an opening, and then I've got some juicy questions for you.
Absolutely. So as Rev Sarah said, I'm the author of this book right here. It's called Gay the Pray Away. And what I'd love to do to kick us off is just read you a little bit of an excerpt from this book. And just as a little bit of backstory, this book was published just this year, in January of this year. So I'm a new author. This is a new release for me. I had no idea I was going to be doing this work in the world. I was ordained last year in 2020 and didn't know what my ministry was going to be. And this book decided it was ready to be birthed out of me. So I said yes to the universe, let it happen. And now I'm on a beautifully wild ride about this topic in this book. And I'm happy to share it with you tonight. The section I'm going to read, I'm going to reference the term conversion therapy. And so before I read, I just wanted to make a quick definition of that term in case anyone listening to this talk isn't aware of that terminology. So as a definition, conversion therapy is basically, it's a practice, it's a debunked practice, but it's a quasi-therapeutic practice that is attempting to change someone's sexual identity or gender identity, sexual orientation or gender identity. So it's typically done in religious contexts, and the rationale tends to be that people should be changed from being gay because that's not in line with their religious church's traditions. So that's kind of where it comes from and why the practice exists. It's something churches do to try to help people fit in with their religious heteronormative culture. So with that being said, I'd love to read you a few sections from my book, Gay the Pray Away. This section is called A Word About Responsibility. The wounds of conversion therapy are so complicated because everything that happened to me was motivated by love. My parents really did, then and now, love me more than anything on earth. They are kind, caring, and generous beyond measure. They honestly believed that they were doing the most loving thing for me. Their intentions were pure, and so were those of the church community. These are not bad people. They are good, loving people. And I believe if they truly understood the harm that conversion therapy causes, they would realize it is not the most loving or Christ-like thing to do, and they would end the practice. This is one of my hopes in going public with this book and my story. In this time of great human awakening, as our eyes are finally opening to the social, racial, and environmental injustices that have been happening under our noses, perpetuated by our ignorant complicity, good intentions are no longer enough. We all have a shared responsibility to awaken from any trance that causes us to unintentionally cause harm to another. if we are part of groups or organizations that validate such behaviors or make us feel justified in doing them because our intentions are good, or we just want to help, or we are speaking for God, this is a time for a collective commitment to higher consciousness. We all have the capacity to step beyond the fear that keeps us from seeing the true reality around us, and beyond the spiritual weaknesses and irresponsibility that keeps us from discerning for ourselves what is right and true. To feel deeply within our hearts, bodies, and conscience when it comes to how we treat each other. Following the voice of the masses or the guidance of the leader without conscious discernment has resulted in humanity carrying out some of the most dangerous and harmful episodes in history. So I'll pause there, and Rev Sarah, if you, as my interviewer, determine that we should do a little more reading later, I do have a few more excerpts we could turn to.
Sounds good. Sounds great. Thank you, Erica. So the first question that I'd love to ask you is, can you tell us, you started when you started this evening telling us that this, this was unplanned and it kind of came, I guess, burst forth from you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to write the book? Why now?
Yeah, definitely. It was as much a surprise to me as to anyone, including my parents, who were like, "Whoa, what are you talking about? What are you out about?" But really, what happened to me was, and I wonder if this is familiar to others on the call, during COVID, with all of the stuff stopping, I was forced to slow down, to go within, to investigate what was going on within myself deeply, and I started to notice that there were places in myself where I was afraid to really show up, to really shine my full light. And that became clear to me in seminary, especially in just seeing where I was blocking myself and resisting myself. And I started to really dissect, why is that? And I had a coach say something to me. The coach said, "Yeah, it seems like you got one foot on the brake while you have the other foot on the gas. What's that about?" And, I thought about it for a second, and I was like, I don't know. I guess I just don't want to be judged by people. I don't want to put myself out there because I'm afraid of judgment. And, he's like, "Well, why is that?" And I said, "Well, like earlier in my life, I had some judgment." And he's like, "What are you talking about? What judgment?" And I was like, "Well, when I was a teenager, I came out as gay, and I was really judged harshly by the church and by my parents that was not okay. And who I wasn't okay. And, they tried to change me and pray the gay away and all of these things." And, he said, "I really think you should journal about this, because here's the thing about judgment. If you're afraid that people outside of you are going to judge you, what you're really afraid of is that somebody's going to say something that confirms what your inner judge has been holding against you all this time." And I was like, wow, inner judge. I really wasn't expecting inner judge. Like, I thought that I was good inside, and it was everyone, other people who might have a problem with me, but I'm good. And so I started journaling about this. And what came out was really actually quite terrifying. One of the things that came out when I asked myself deeply, okay, how do I really feel about myself? A part of me said, you must be a monster. You must be a monster, because only a monster would go against God's will for your life. Only a monster would cause your parents so much pain. Only a monster would shake up your church community in this way. And this is something that happened to me 20 plus years ago. And so to see that on the paper and say, whoa, holy cow, I'm actually still carrying around that from that a long time ago, it really shook me up. And, I talked to some of my counselors about that, the ones that I was attached to seminary with. And they said to me, they're like, what you experienced was trauma. And if you've never named it as trauma, if you've never said that an attempt to change who you are and tell you who you are at your core of your essence is not lovable and worthy, and that God can't love you, that's a traumatic experience. And I was like, whoa, no, trauma is that bad stuff that happens to people. Like, this didn't work on me. So no harm, no foul, right? And, it was then that the counselor was like, I recommend that you talk to somebody about more traumatic related counseling. And it was in that moment that I started going in to see some PTSD specialists and some others who work on those sorts of things. And literally after 3 sessions, it was like something in my throat unblocked. And all of a sudden it was like, I have to tell the story. I have to share this. I was getting free of some of the bondage that I was holding on to, like some of the ways I was limiting myself and staying small. They had become clear to me, and I was clearing them. I was feeling myself clear them out. And then at that moment, it was like, I've got to share the story. There are people out there who I can help with this story, and I have to, this has to be my first ministry in the world. So that's how it began, Rev Sarah.
You know, I was thinking it's so interesting that many of us, and perhaps some of the people that are here joining us here tonight too, you know, we do all this spiritual work and we get through all these things and you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, here's another thing that popped up. Like I thought I was good with that. And while you were talking, it reminded me like I didn't come out publicly until seminary. I think there's something about the seminary experience. I mean, I came out at bars, right? Fine. But in my, you know, in my corporate life, I did not. And I think there's something about doing that deep, deep work when one decides to be in service to the world where you you just have to go there. So I know that sometimes we don't know how to go there. We're not exactly sure what the path is. And so within your book, you have something that you've created called the Rainbow Path, which inspired my background. Can you can you tell us a little bit what is the Rainbow Path?
Yeah, so the rainbow path it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek technique. It's super real and super helpful, but I also gave it the name the rainbow path because I just wanted it to always be imprinted with a very gay symbol. Like I really wanted it to be the rainbow path. I could have named it something else, but that felt right. And so the rainbow path is actually an acronym, and every letter in the word rainbow is a step on this path. And just to kind of say why this path, everyone's healing journey is different. But there is absolutely a healing journey that when I look back at what I went through, these were the steps that it took, one built on the one beneath it. And these were really the steps that it took to go from being in the state of denying that I had internalized hatred to realizing it, to clearing it out, and then to the healing process that came from that, to coming into this place of wholeness and really stepping into my full authenticity and shining my light as who I am. And so the rainbow path is kind of the representation of those steps. And it's what I use when I'm coaching and counseling with people. We follow this as just a very loose structure or methodology that just gives some milestones along the path. And again, it's not linear. Everyone who's healed anything in their life knows healing is not linear. It's messy, and you go forward and you go back and you go around in circles and you spiral and you go deep and you go, all of those things are true. But there is something nice about knowing that there are these kind of milestones that you can touch into. And so, you know, we can talk more about exactly what those milestones are on the rainbow path, but you know, every letter is a step, and it has to, the first one, the R, is reality check, like recognize that what happened to you. And by the way, this is not necessarily even if you are a gay person and you were told by somebody that you are not okay. This could be that you are a straight person and you had a father who was angry and said something to you at some point in time that you internalized, that was that you're not good enough. Or, you know, this could have been a bully in class, and it may have nothing to do with sexuality. It might have been, you know, anything about you. All of us, I believe, have these messages. And, you know, we are sensitive beings. I didn't realize, like, you know, I like to be tough. I like to look tough, you know, but if I'm honest, like, I'm a sensitive being, and I think we all are. And so these messages, as much as we're like, yeah, I brushed that off, didn't hurt me, it does. And those messages can get lodged in there and stuck in there. And I was shocked that I was still carrying them around, and they were running my life in a way. Like I was not paying attention to them, but they were certainly paying attention to me and running my life. So that's why the rainbow path kicks off with that R of reality check. Like, what messages might you still be carrying around? And there's a little quiz in there that kind of helps you identify if you're still holding on to some messages, and if they're still showing up in your life in a way that's kind of sabotaging that you may not expect.
It's so funny. Even while you were saying that, I had these images of like things girls said to me in 6th grade, just as you were talking, that popped up.
The mean
So
girl.
I think, right, things that the things that we do to the uncompassionate, since we're framed here in compassion,
Yes.
things that we sometimes do and say to each other. So what you're saying is the rainbow path could help me with the different points that aren't necessarily just about sexuality, but perhaps gender or my body image or things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really the beginning part of rainbow. I'll just go ahead and go through it just so people can kind of orient to it. But really,
Sounds great.
the beginning part, once you've really reality checked. You've recognized that, wow, I am still holding on to some internalized messages. Like that person is no longer hurting me or abusing me, but guess what? I'm now doing it to myself because I'm still telling myself that message on repeat subconsciously. And that's painful. And so then the A in rainbow is, okay, so assess the damage of that. What does that look like? In my life, the place in my life that was acceptable to my family and my church was my mental space. Like if I was smart, they approved of me, that was good. So I just locked in on my mental self, and I was an achiever. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, I can earn my love this way because I'm going to be smart and I'm going to be successful. Meanwhile, I was not paying any attention to my emotional body, my spiritual self. Like all of those took a back seat because they were controversial. They were not things that we were going to discuss. So part of assessing is really doing an assessment of how am I physically? Have I internalized some of this stuff and caused myself physical harm? Is it showing up as a sickness or an illness or pain? How is it showing up? And ultimately, once you assess how are you physically, how are you emotionally, how are you mentally and spiritually, the I is now you integrate. Because, doctors, famous psychiatrists like Dan Siegel and others will say that integration is the key to any healing. And so when I realized about myself that my mental body was way overdeveloped, my emotional body was way underdeveloped, and the other two were hanging in the balance, I needed to really do some integration work. I needed to get myself back in my body and learn I was safe in my body. I needed to touch into those emotions and start to feel some things, like feel some sadness, feel some anger, feel some grief, feel some pain. And, there are practices I talk about in the book. There are different modalities that can help you with that integration. I know I needed to focus on some embodiment work. I needed to focus on some kind of emotional resilience types of work. And depending on what it is for you, there are ways that you can work on those parts to get yourself back in balance. That's the I. The in, and the in may be specific to if you've had religious trauma, but I'm curious if this resonates to everyone. Maybe it does. But the in for me is really nurturing your North Star. And that means I received a lot of messages from religion that, who I was not compatible with faith, with religion, with spirituality. And yet my belief system is that I am a spiritual being having a human experience. So walking around on the planet without touching into my spiritual self is not an option. Like I can't, I'm not a whole person. I'm not existing in my fullness. So the nurturing your North Star is really, can we find a way to come back to a spiritual center, but in a way that really is big enough to hold? And, it's a way that's affirming to you. It's a way that works for you. This is where some of the other pathways come in. The reason I'm an interfaith minister is because maybe that's through a Buddhist door. Maybe it's through the Kabbalah. Maybe it's through the mystics of, the Sufis from Islam. And, there are many ways in that might be bigger and broader than the ways that you might have tried to come in before. And the North Star really helps you find those. And then the back end of the rainbow is really, okay, so now you've really come over the hump of this. The B is build your inner compass. And for me, one of the messages of conversion therapy, this one's pretty awful, but they did teach me that, like I would say to them, but I feel attracted to girls. And they would say, well, that's Satan trying to trick you. You can't trust how you feel. You can't trust your intuition. You can't trust your gut. You can't trust what you feel inside. That is Satan trying to trick you. Satan's very tricky. Satan will confuse you. Don't be confused. And my takeaway from that is like, okay, so I can never trust anything happening inside of me. I guess the only people I can trust are all those people out there telling me what's right and what's wrong for me. And boy, you can imagine as an adult going into, I don't know, relationships, for example, and not trusting my own intuition of, does this feel right for me? Does this not feel right for me? It really set me up for not a lot of success as I became more of an adult. So a lot of my healing journey has been rebuilding that inner compass and learning again, like, okay, so what is my truth? Where do I find that in my body? Where do I feel that in my body? Where's my center of intuition and knowledge and wisdom and that deep inner still voice that tells me yes? Where I connect with the divine, like all of that, I had to get that back online. And so I think a lot of colleagues that I have, others in this boat and maybe beyond, they experience that as well. And then the O of rainbow is just open your heart. So all of us, I guarantee us, all of us have experienced some kind of heartbreak. And it takes courage to reopen your heart to love, to presence. It's no surprise that the root of the word heart is the same as the root of the word courage. Like those two words are connected for a reason. And it takes courage to reopen that heart. And so the O part of it is really like getting into the forgiveness stuff, getting into the worthiness stuff, really breaking some of that down and removing some of that armor around the heart. And then finally, the W is, it's almost like you got to the end of the rainbow and the W tells you, well, you're just at the beginning. It's the W is now it's the work. Now it's time to keep doing the work. Don't go back to sleep. This is it. You got to stay on your game now. Now you've awakened to this. You've noticed all this stuff. Now let's continue unpacking the layers and keep going.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot. So
a lot.
everyone needs to get the book so they can get the detail on that and remember. So tell me, because we're framed today in the context of compassion. You just talked a lot about self-compassion. I heard a lot of that. I also know that when we have been talking about this event, you were talking to me about compassion to others and how important that is for you. Can we pivot in that direction for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, after I had been, I guess you could say harmed, right? After I had been harmed by other people, I now knew what that felt like. And so it was very easy for me to take on an orientation as I moved through the world of, oh, I don't want to make other people feel that way because that's not a good feeling. So how can I make sure that I'm being as compassionate as possible and not inflicting harm on others? And so I had to really start looking at my own life. And what's interesting is, as much as I wanted to focus it out there on being a kind person to others, it always came back to me. It always came back to, if I wasn't kind, it wasn't intentional. It was because I was bumping into my own triggers or my own blocks to love or my own feelings of insecurity, or one of my wounds had been touched. And that just kept telling me that the way that I can be compassionate out in the world is to do that work within myself of finding the places that I'm blocked from love, so that I can be the radiance of love and compassion that I want to be. And I have one story in particular that I want to share about, and that is really around this. For a long time, I felt like if I let go of anger around my story, I would lose, like an injustice would have been committed and nobody would be holding that story anymore. Like if I let it go, it's not like anybody else is holding it. So it would just evaporate into the vapors and it would be like it never happened. And that's too much to bear. Like I got to keep holding the anger around this because I got to keep this story from disappearing out of reality. And, it took me some work to work on that. But when I did, I realized, okay, the only person this anger that I'm holding on to is hurting is me. It's not like it's hurting anyone else. I'm holding on to it thinking that I'm keeping justice from, being done. But no, I'm just continuing to harm myself by holding so much anger and, holding anger in my body. And so that was part of this step of compassion, was really helping myself realize that if I can let go of that, I'm free. It's not like I'm freeing other people and resolving them of wrong. I'm actually freeing myself. And that allows me now to be the loving, compassionate being that I want to be. And when I could do that, I was able to see things in a way that I never imagined. I was able to see my parents. This is really fascinating. I was able to see my mom not as, this person who was trying to harm me. I was able to see her as this child who, for the first time in her life, found this love of a father, right? Like she didn't have a great relationship with her father. So here she is in a church context. She knows this father and this father loves her and she knows how to please this heavenly father. And I'm now like asking her to turn against that. Like that, what a hard thing to ask a mother, to make that decision. Like, do I now risk this relationship I finally have with a father who loves me? Or, do I go with my daughter on this one? Like, what do I do? And my heart just broke with compassion when I thought about the situation she must have been in that moment and the decisions that she had to make. So like, again, I wouldn't have even been able to see that if I didn't do my own inner work to kind of let go of some of that anger around the situation and be able to see it without those triggers.
So you and I and William and I know at least a couple folks who are in the audience today are graduates of One Spirit Interfaith Seminary. And so we cannot have a conversation, well, without having a piece of music first, or without talking about spiritual practice. And so I know that in your bio, I read that enthusiasm was your spiritual practice. Can you talk a little bit, you're talking about this inner work, right? You're talking about what you're doing in forgiveness, heart opening, all of that. What are the specific or maybe just pick one practice that you do that helps you do this inner work.
Yeah, I want to say a moment about the enthusiasm part, and then I'll talk to you about some of my favorite practices. So when I was in seminary, somebody broke down the etymology of the word enthusiasm for me, and they showed me that it was actually in theos, and in the Greek, that's with God, like the God within. And I've always been a very energetic person and enthusiastic person. I get excited about things, and it was in that moment this massive light bulb went on, like, wow. So every time I'm in those moments of just like the kind of that pure excitement and bliss, I'm in the flow with the divine. Like that is a practice. That is a spiritual practice. I'm with the flow of God in that moment. And it really, like, I embrace that. I'm like, wow, this is my spiritual practice. I get to be enthusiastic and know that this is just the divine's love and excitement flowing through me. So that's a bit about the enthusiasm piece. And I've really like held that dear to my heart ever since. But as far as practices, meditation has, believe it or not, played a very big role in my entire spiritual awakening. The first time I ever meditated, and I grew up in a Christian tradition. So meditation was never part of my practice, and prayer was always very mental. It was always me thinking of what to say to God and like making my list, all of that stuff. It was very mental. And so I didn't leave any space for silence. I didn't leave any space for listening. And meditation taught me, the first time I did it, it was like I got a little bit of space from my mind. And that was the most liberating thing I'd ever experienced, because up until that point, I thought that every thought I had, everything going on in my mind was just reality. It was like, it was my life. I was caught up in every thought. And so if a thought went into drama, I was at drama. If a thought went into a story, I was in that story. And the moment that I had this space and was able to see those thoughts and see them happening, but not get attached into the drama of them, it was liberation for me. And so I really, as I've used meditation as a tool, it has done a couple things for me. One is it's really helped me with my alignment. And an example of that is why I'm a part of this community, the Compassion Consortium community, because I was in meditation and I was able to listen deeply enough to myself. And what I heard was, you got to change your diet. You want to be this peaceful person in the world, and you're not reflecting that on your plate. And I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't, I'm from Texas. Okay. In Texas, we don't, at least the kind of Texas I grew up in, a meal wasn't a meal if there wasn't something dead on the plate. So anyways, it was a shock to me to hear that message in the silence of meditation with the whisperings of my heart. And I said, okay, I don't know what this is about, but I'm sure you're going to show me. And no doubt, within probably 14 days, a vegan person walked into my life who was a 3-time Ironman triathlete. And my biggest objection to being vegetarian or vegan or anything was that, well, I'm an athlete. Where am I going to get my protein? And it was just like the universe continued to unfold this story for me by putting this person in my life who was like, no, let me show you, this is how it works. And so meditation has always been a source for me of going into the silence. And whether it's meditation that gets you there, or whether it's a long walk in nature that gets me there, it's that silence where I can listen instead of talking, where I can focus my mind. I don't make my mind stop, but I can focus my mind on listening. And what I notice in that listening is there's an expansiveness that happens. It's like all of a sudden I'm tapped into something bigger and greater and more expansive than the small version of my life, my story, my dramas, all of that. And I have found for me, if I don't touch into that on a fairly regular basis, it's very easy for me to get caught up in just, the day-to-day crazy. But by doing that, by just having a practice where I go into the silence for a moment and know that this is where I'm taking a breath, I'm settling in, I'm opening up to something bigger, to a version of myself that is more expansive and bigger. That is what enables me to go on and remember who I am, and then show up as that more often in the world.
Beautiful. And speaking of silence, Phil told me the last time I spoke, I was really, really, really loud. So how do I sound now? Thumbs up from the bridge?
Sounding good.
Excellent. Thank you. So what I want to do now is pause for just a minute. I still have some more questions for Erica, but I want to give an opportunity to all of you who are gathered here if you have a question you'd like to interject, either by raising your digital hand or by tossing it into the chat, anything around these kind of topics that we've been talking about being told that who you are is not okay, or how we work with compassion, how we work, if you have questions about the rainbow path, or anything else for Erica, go ahead and raise your hand or throw it in the chat while I ask her this. Oh, hey, that was so fast, Elizabeth. Thank you. So Elizabeth asks, how did you finally win over your parents to accept you? Great
Yeah,
question.
this is truly the most profound story. I still am in a bit of awe that it happened. I would love to read an excerpt from the book before I tell you the punchline of the story. So is that okay with you, Rev Sarah? Okay.
Absolutely, go for it.
All right. So something happened in my own journey where I finally realized, like, oh, I can be both at that time in my life, Christian and gay. I got the message that that was okay. And so that leads into the story, which is the part of this is called seeking approval. Unfortunately, my parents didn't get the same memo about the church's conflicting views. They held strong with their church's view that my lifestyle was wrong and sinful. Thus ensued a multi-year battle of my mom and I desperately trying to prove and convince the other that each of us was right. Books, letters, Bible verses were sent back and forth. My name was given to prayer warriors and pinned on prayer walls in hopes that diligent groups of prayerful servants could save me. We were in a fight for my soul, and neither of us was willing to give up. The truth, I could have the acceptance of anyone in the world, the town of Austin, my professors, my friends' parents, my extended family, the more progressive churches and pastors. But the one person's acceptance I wanted more than any in the world was my mom's. It wasn't my soul I was actually fighting for. It was her approval. I wanted her to tell me I was okay and lovable exactly as I am, that she loved me just as I am, regardless of what her church said, that she understood me and saw my true beauty, that she trusted the depth and truth of my relationship with God, that she would fight for me against her church's mistrust of me. I hated this reality because this seemed to be the one person's approval I couldn't get, no matter how hard I tried. So that passage is so significant to me because after writing the book, after doing all this inner work of the journey, getting to this place of kind of healing and wholeness, there was one piece of inner work I did. It was guided by a practitioner. He was a hypnotist and an NLP practitioner, neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. And he did this sort of regression with me that he had kind of created using the NLP framework. And there was one point in the process where my inner teenager got involved and was like, nope, we're not going any further. This is it. Nope, this isn't happening. And what he said to me was, okay, I need you to call your higher self in right now. So we called in my higher self. And he said, have your higher self just hold that inner teenager in a hug. And we're going to grow that inner teenager up through the timelines to present day. And now you're going to merge that inner teenager with the you of now, the you who has all the strength that you have, all the experience you have, all the wisdom you have, all the compassion you have, all the insight you have. Your inner teenager is now integrated with that you. And okay, so session ended, nothing profound happened. 4 days later, no joke, 4 days later, my mom wrote me an email out of the blue. And the email subject said, long overdue. And she went on to say basically the words that I just wrote in that book of what I wished she had said. She typed those words out to me in the email. I love you for who you are. I accept you for who you are. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry the church mistrusted you. And I'm sorry I chose you over the church. Like literally the dream wish list of everything I wish she would have said to me. She wrote that in this email to me. And in that moment, I had this vision flash in my mind. And the vision was when I was young, we had a cat. And the cat, like when it would pee on the carpet, for better or for worse, vegans don't listen. I didn't appreciate this either, but they would rub the cat's nose in the pee to try to get it to not do that again. Like that was its way of saying, don't do that again. The vision I had in my mind was that my teenager was holding my mom's face in the carpet for 20 plus years, saying, you will not do this again. You will learn your lesson. You will not ever do this again. And something happened in that moment when I was on my own inner journey. I let go of her. My teenager let go of her and grew up. And even though this was all happening in the ethers, on the energetic plane, my releasing her in that moment somehow let her grow up too. It let her come to the present moment as well. And she was no longer stuck in the past, and I was no longer holding her stuck in the past. And we both came to this moment in the present. And she was able to say that to me. And it was so profound. And I know when I tell this story that not everyone ever gets to have resolution with their, people who have, harmed them in some way or another. And I know I'm so blessed and fortunate to have gotten to this point in my lifetime. I will say that we still don't see eye to eye on many things. So it's not like she's my super biggest fan. Like, she's not super psyched that I'm an interfaith minister. She wishes I was a Christian minister, but I'll never change her mind on that, I don't believe. But at least on this one issue, we got to this beautiful healing place. And when we saw each other again, this all happened during COVID. When we saw each other again, she just broke into tears and was crying. And she put her head on my shoulder, actually. And she said, I'm so sorry. I didn't have a good relationship with my father. I don't want to have another bad relationship with somebody that I love so much. So I want to heal this. I want to fix this. I want to make this right. And I started crying, and just the two of us were like, oh, like for the first time in my life, I felt like I could really say, I love you. And I felt like when she said, I love you, I received it. Because before, and I told her this, I said, Mom, here's the thing. Like, you've always said, I love you my whole life, but I never felt like you really loved me. I really felt like you loved this idea of me, or this idea of a daughter that you should love, the concept. But me, if you can't accept me for who I am, how can you love me? And she got it. She was like, you're right. And I love you. And it was just, it was just beyond profound.
I'm struck by how beautiful that story is. And I'm also struck by the idea that it doesn't always have that same ending. That there are maybe people that are still in our audience here who are still waiting for that email, who are still hoping for that type of thing. What would be the recommendation that you would have? This was not on our question list. This just popped out of the ethers, Erica, because you brought it up.
Yeah.
But for that, I'm hearing in what you're saying a piece of forgiveness, surrender, acceptance. I'm hearing some things around there, but what recommendation? I don't want to say advice,
Yeah.
right? Because we know this is a process, and we know that what works for one person, may not. We all are on these very remarkable individual things, but I just feel kind of called to ask that question.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this, especially as I work with people who, in some cases, parents have passed away. There's no possibility of that kind of resolution ever happening on this plane of existence. And when I unpack what got me to that step, I remembered that before that happened, I had done a similar process with my mom in my mind. I had actually written a letter that I had wished she had said. I had wrote it out as if it were from her to me. And I accepted it as if it were from her. And I basically in my mind visualized that her higher self was giving that to me, that even if her nowadays self, her present day self wasn't capable of doing that, there's a part in her that could do that. And that was the part I was connecting with when I was doing this kind of visualization journey. I connected to that part. I wrote this letter from that voice, and then I received that letter to myself as if it had happened in real life. And there was a long period of my life when I thought that was going to be as good. That was going to be it. I was going to be okay with that. And I did. If I recall those times, I realized I did release the attachment to an outcome in those moments. I basically said, okay, I'm satisfied with this. I know that it's coming from her highest self, and that there is a part in her that does get this and know this and feel this. And I'm okay if she never gets there on the human plane. It may not be her path this lifetime to ever get to that place. And I'm releasing her to her path, and I'm accepting this from her higher self. And I'm letting go of the need or desire or attachment to it ever being different than it is today. And I believe if I hadn't have done that work leading up to this, I still might have been a little too attached to the outcome to have been able to have allowed the full freedom of that possibility to exist.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Erica. I just found out we have a question from a galaxy far, far away. Phil,
Yay.
you're up.
All right. Hey, can you hear me? All right.
Yeah.
Reverend Erica, thank you so much for sharing your experience here on this. My question is, you were talking about like the early part where you're blocking, literally like blocking your blessings in your life here, and I put down you were talking about an inner judge, like you were projecting on from an inner judge that was confirming, like, can you bring that up one more time? It was just so eloquent the way you brought it.
That was it. That point bears repeating, because the first time I heard it, I was like, wait, what? So the idea is, if you're realizing that you're afraid of judgment from outside of you, there's really nothing anybody outside of can say that can touch you, unless you somewhere inside are secretly holding that same belief. So, if somebody tells you from outside that you're fat, and you are sitting on a bench feeling like, oh, I'm so fat, when that person says that, it's going to hurt your feelings. But if you're like, what are you talking about? I'm okay, whatever. Like, it doesn't stick. And there really is something true about that I was really only afraid of other people outside saying something like, oh, you're going to hell, or, oh, how dare you be a reverend and a gay person? That's hypocritical. I wouldn't have cared about any of that if it wasn't that a part of me inside was still holding on to that possible belief. And so that's the deal with the inner judge, outer judge. And so you can use the exterior world. I mean, if we want to get into the metaphysics here, I believe a lot of things show up in our lives because we call them here to show us things that we need to see, right? So it may be that I put those judges in my life to say those things because my inner judge was holding them against me, and I needed to bring that to the light and be aware of that. So you can use that as a litmus test. If somebody says something that hurts, there's a good chance that you are holding inside of you that belief, even if you're not aware of it. It may be subconscious. And so that can be a little bit of a whisper to you of like, oh, let me go look at that. Let me go look at, is there a part of me that believes that too? And that's why I'm so angry that that person just said that to me.
Thank you, Reverend Erica. Thank you, Phil, for the question. If anyone else has questions, we still have a few minutes here too, so raise your hand or pop one up into the chat.
And I will say, I like to say this if I'm offering questions to a group, there's no offensive question. I know some people, like, you may just not have been exposed to queer people before. And so if there's anything that you're wondering or you feel embarrassed to ask, like, I can be one of those people who is a safe space to ask a question that you've always been wondering. So I'm just opening that up as well, that if there's something that you feel a little like, oh, I should know this already, I shouldn't ask that, I'll seem silly, please let this be a place where you can have some of those questions answered as well.
I have a question. So I'm not gay, but I read part of this book, and I think it's a really important book. And I know that you're focusing on the gay community because it's about conversion therapy. But I was just wondering what your plans were for the future. Do you plan on expanding your focus so that, because I really think that the crux of what you're saying is applicable to anybody. I've never been taunted, or nobody's tried to convert my sexuality, but I have been persecuted before because I was different. My beliefs were different, or something was different about me. And so it's, very similar. And I was just wondering if you were going to try to expand your reach to, for this book.
Yeah, I so appreciate that, both the question and the suggestion that this has farther reaching implications. I've heard that from others as well who have read it and said, well, I'm not gay, but I'll tell you actually a kind of a funny story. I have an audiobook version of this as well. And when I was in the studio recording it, the woman who was my producer of the book, she never does the audio engineering. She normally outsources that, but she said this inner voice told her she should do the audio engineering, because it would force her to literally listen to every line of this entire book over and over at such detail. And by the time we were done with the 3 days of recording, and she's a straight woman, she said to me, this is exactly what I needed to hear. She was dealing with something in her life and some old stuff. She's an adopted woman. And so she had some places where she never felt like she was fully accepted and belonged, and there was something wrong with her. And she found so much healing in what was being said. So yes, I think this is an area where I need to, there's the wounded part of me that wants to stay small and say, well, oh, but I'm safe in my queer community. If I just talk to them, I don't have to open myself up to maybe being, judged, that same thing that I'm still holding against myself. But I also do feel like Spirit is giving me these little nudges of like, you can help more people with this. And, part of my vow as a minister is to be that vessel, be that open channel for whatever good can come through me. And so I'm sure that's going to involve me stepping out of the queer circle into the bigger world and letting this out there to those who need it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think of what question that I'm harboring deep inside. Like I feel like we're into the juicy ask a queer portion of this of this session right
Juicy
here,
bit.
but nothing has come up for me. So if anyone else has something that's come up, any other questions that you might have, go ahead and let us know. I'm going to ask the last question that I ask anybody that I ever interview in the meantime, and go ahead and raise your hand and throw a chat in if you've got something that comes up. If there was one thing, Reverend Erica, that you could recommend to the people gathered here today to do to increase their capacity for compassion, what would it be?
It's a good question. I actually think it is slowing down and offering that compassion to self, whatever that looks like. Like if there's a part of life where you're pushing through, even though maybe your body is telling you not to, or your emotions are telling you not to, or something inside of you is saying, don't push there, but something outside of you is saying, but I have to. I think every time I've started there, it really has, like, the minute I offer that compassion to myself and treat myself with the comfort and tenderness that I need, immediately my softening goes out into the world as well. It allows me to be more of a softened being to others, and it does increase my capacity for compassion. And so to me, that's the slowing down and getting to that place of stillness, of quiet, of silence, of expansiveness. And that's the thing that always does it for me, Rev Sarah.
So you're saying that you can be hard and cool and funky and also soft at the same time?
Don't tell anybody. It's my little
Don't tell
secret.
anyone? I wish I had heard that from you about 30 years ago.
Yeah, you can be both. I wish I had heard that from me 30 years ago.
I remember when I first entered seminary and people used words like soften. And I was like, hell no. I have protective armor. I have worked very hard to build up here. I am not going to soften.
Yeah.
So I very, very much appreciate your answer there, Erica. I also want to offer a recommendation for increasing compassion by teeing up here as we're closing the next Compassion Consortium Sunday service, which Reverend Erica and William and Victoria and Phil and I offer every Sunday. And Phil, I think you've got a slide there with some info about um, who is coming next. On June 27th, we have, I just love the photos. They just really do justice to, I think, what's going to happen in our Sunday service in June. We have Mother Pigeon who's coming. We have Jane Velez Mitchell, who used to be on CNN and now runs Jane Unchained. Eric is going to do a practice with some of the beings from Farm Sanctuary. And we'll do something we do every month, which is Sacred Send-Offs, where we do prayers and blessings for humans and other than humans who need our support. And we also witness any joys that are going on. So thank you for tossing that up there for us. So Erica, as we close, we have two ways I think we can go here, and I'm going to leave it to you to choose whether you would like us to go out with prayer and a little meditation, something in that kind of soft silent space, or rather you would like to go out with more Lady Gaga. So I'm going to leave that up to you to kind of close us out here. And you can tell
You know what
Phil
I'd
which
actually
direction you'd like to go.
I'd love to dance again, but what I think I'm going to do instead, and maybe dance after, is there's something. So I didn't mention this in my talk, but I run a monthly gathering about queer spirituality. It's called Gay the Pray. So my book is Gay the Pray Away. But what I don't really want people to gay the pray away. I actually want them to just gay the pray. I want them to have a spiritual life and accept, who they are and be their full selves. So this event, Gay the Pray, there's something we do in it as our signature piece. And how many of you remember the Care Bears? Any familiarity with the Care Bears? All right. So the Care Bears had that Care Bear stare. And it was like that heart space would open up and this rainbow light would come shining out, and it would just heal things. It would just fix situations and heal things. And so during Gay the Pray, we actually do the Care Bear stare. We do this energetic prayer field. We connect our energy to each other, and then we pull our rainbow light together and we shine it out into the world to places that need it. Sometimes we direct it to a specific thing. Sometimes we just kind of let it do a rainbow waterfall over the whole earth and planet and send our rainbow love, and we take it back for ourselves. So I would suggest that maybe as a closing energetic prayer that we do a little Gay the Pray stare, Care Bear stare. And I'm happy to lead us in that if in our last little 2 minutes here, if everyone's willing. So if you'll just start to bring your awareness into your body, start to notice where you are in space and time right now. What surfaces are you touching? What do you feel on your skin? What is supporting you? Begin to notice your breath. On the inhale, just noticing, where does your breath go? Does it go to your chest, your lungs? Does it go down into your belly? And see if you can take an inhale that's a little bit deeper. Breathing more deeply, more fully into the expansiveness of your inner body. And using the exhale to just release anything that might be stuck, any emotions that might have come up for you tonight that you want to send out lovingly. The breath is such a beautiful tool for bringing in new energy and releasing old energy. It's kind of an alchemist in that way. So bringing your awareness now to your heart center. Just begin to feel into that space. And from your heart, just beginning to feel your connection to source, to spirit, to the cosmos, to the universe. Just feeling like a beam of light coming from the heavens through your crown, right into your heart space. And filling that heart up, filling that heart space up with that brilliant, bright light. And then from the earth beneath us, from the mother that loves us so much, just feeling the roots, feeling that energy, that grounded energy coming up through your feet, through the roots of your feet, through your feet, up your body and right into your heart as well. And just filling up your heart with that beautiful earth support and love and energy. And as those two energies begin to intermix in your heart, the universal divine heavenly energy, the earth supportive energy, as those swirl around in your heart, they begin to make the color of a rainbow. Just really feel your heart being bathed and covered in this rainbow light, just being fully encompassed by this warm, vibrant, healing rainbow light. It's just filling and overflowing your heart. And now just if you want to use your hands for this, or if you want to just use your mind's eye, just see yourself connecting to the others on this call. We're just going to make a grid. We're going to send energy to and from each other, crisscrossing across the globe here as we connect each of our energies to each other. If we were together, we might be shoulder to shoulder, hand to hand. But for now, we're making a tapestry right across the entire surface of the Zoom universe. And with our energies connected, just rest in the knowing that this is an amplifier, that any energy you have as an individual, when connected in this prayer field with this intention of sending love out, it gets amplified even further. So as you're plugged into this prayer field, the first thing I'll invite you to do is just, if there's anything you need, any love, healing you need, go ahead and take that from this prayer field. Let this prayer field flood you with that healing light and love, going right to the parts of you that need that, taking in that healing. If there are any loved ones that you want to plug into this prayer field because they need some love or light or healing, just plug them in as well. Just make them a part of this collective grid that we're making, where they can give energy into this and receive energy and healing out from it. And the last thing we'll do is keeping connected to each other, bringing awareness back into that heart space. And we're just really going to send out our love and light with the intention of the highest good for all, for the planet, for the world, for people, for humanity. May we all be more loving. May we all be more compassionate. May we all feel healed within ourselves so that we can be that love and compassion in the world to others. And just really allowing your heart space to open, and that rainbow energy that was welling up and overflowing in your heart, just see that shining out into the world. See that just shooting right out from your chest, and see all of us doing that at the same time, amplifying our energy together, connected, sending that out into the world. If there's somewhere specific you want to send it, feel free to do that. If you want to just see it showering, almost like it went up into the atmosphere and now it's just raining down these rainbow shooting stars and streamers of energy just down, embracing everyone and everything, every animal, every plant, every person, every being, with this beautiful, warm rainbow love and light, as if it were wrapping every single person up in a beautiful hug of rainbow energy. And it just, people just relax in this hug, and they just feel held, they feel safe, they feel seen, they feel accepted, unconditionally supported and loved and worthy. And as we come back to the space, just begin to pull this rainbow light back to yourself, knowing that it still is out there surrounding everyone else. And just begin to wiggle your fingers and toes, begin to feel into your body, just begin to come back to yourself, come back to the space. And know that you can always connect into this prayer grid. It's here for you. We just built it together. It stays with you. So anytime you need a rainbow hug, plug in, get your rainbow hug, know that you're loved, know that you're accepted exactly as you are. You're so amazing just as you are. And we need you to shine in the world the beautiful essence of exactly who you are for the benefit of all. And so be it.
Thank you, Erica, so much. Thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for sharing this practice. Thank you, William, for putting this together and opening our talk tonight. Thank you, Phil, for keeping everything going in the Zoomosphere. And thank you, everyone who came tonight to listen and to gather with us and to share with us. We hope to see you again soon at another Compassion Consortium event.
Happy Pride, everybody.
Happy Pride! Oh, I lost my fingers. There we go. Happy Pride.